Okay, so in the next 2 days, what we're going to do is build this application right here, which is basically just a simple contact tracker. Okay, so you'll be able to like add your own contacts. We're not going to be done with this in 2 days to get it to actually save the contacts, but that's what we're kind of leading to, is being able to save them to a file and read them from a file, so you can actually like use this application if you didn't use the contacts on your phone or whatever. It's just a nice way to kind of introduce this idea. So we're not going to build this today, but I want you to have the idea that when you add a contact, when you click this add button, we'll get some form that allows us to put in the information for a contact, and when we submit it, it'll get added on to the list that we have here. Does that idea make sense? So the idea then is that when we click add contact, we're going to see something, and this is what we're going to build today. You're going to see something that looks like this, right? So that we can fill in information and then submit it, and it'll get added onto that list. All right? So this looks just like a frame, all right? Except that it's a new thing that we haven't learned about yet, and that is a dialog. Okay? So the difference between a frame and a dialog is just that a dialog allows you to get some information back from it. Okay? And you're used to using dialogs, but I don't know if you're used to calling them the right thing. Okay? So let's go over to Eclipse. Well, let's do this. Let's think about this a little bit more. Okay? So in this case, what 4 pieces of information make up a contact? Yeah. Okay, so pretty simple, right? First name, last name, phone number, and email address. Right? So let's kind of think about this going forward here. If we go over to Eclipse, okay, inside of your GUI project here, what we're going to do is go ahead and create a new class. Okay, so let me just kind of talk about this real quick. This right here that we're used to using, okay, is a frame. That's like the basis of Eclipse. Okay, everything that all the work that we do goes onto this frame. All right. When we click to make a new class, like we're used to, this is a dialog. Okay. So the purpose of a dialog is it looks like a frame, but we're trying to get some information back to the main program that we can't easily get on the main program. Okay? So that's the purpose of a dialog. That's the same thing that we're going to do with the contact tracker. Contact tracker is going to show us all of our contacts. When we want to add a new one, or for example, see their phone number or see their email address or whatever, then we'll have to click something to view it. Okay? Or click a button to add it. So then we're going to get the information about the contact from a dialog and put it back into the frame. Does that concept make sense? Okay, so the same thing that we're doing here where we're saying we need a new class, we want to add something to this list over here, okay, so we got to give it the information that we want about that thing. All right? A good place to start with this is to actually say, well, thinking about this picture again, the dialog is only going to be able to return one thing. Okay? So it can't return 4 things. So is it better to say like, well, you got to choose. Do you want to get the first name or the last name or the phone number or the email address? I mean, no, we don't want to just get one of those 4 things. We want to get all 4 things. And so what we'll do is we'll group those things together into a new object. Okay? Into a contact object. Does that concept make sense? Okay? So it's kind of like you're going to group it together on like a Rolodex card. You guys know what I'm saying? Or on like a business card. Okay? And we're going to give that thing a name. All right? And the name that we're going to give it is contact. Okay? So So this is not the interface. This is like the actual business card, okay? So when we finish that, we get this new class called contact. And what we want to do, and you guys reviewed this last week, what we want to do with contact is we want to define the properties of a contact using variables. All right? So what's one property of a contact? There's 4 altogether. We already saw them. First name, right? So then we have to decide if that's a variable in here, what type of variable is it? Okay, so on the interface it's a label, but like an actual name like Rufus, what type of variable, what type of value is Rufus? A string. Okay, so we would say string first name and then string last name, right? What should phone number be? All right, so that's a common first answer, right? Is int. Is this right here is 414-267-0700 an int? Why not? It has those hyphens in there, right? So if it has non-numeric characters, then we can't have it be an int. So really, all of these things are strings. Okay, so we'll just go back here, string phone, string email. Now, if you were doing this professionally, maybe you would say, you know, well, you can have more than one phone number. You can have a home phone, a work phone, a mobile phone. You know what I mean? We're just worried about one phone number, one email, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay? So then the next thing that we want to do when we define this contact object is we want to say, we want to build the constructor or define the constructor. Okay? So, what should the constructor start out as? Or how do we define a constructor? Yeah. Yeah, it starts with the name of the class, right? So we're going to go public contact, just like that. All right. Who can tell me what the purpose of a constructor is? Why do we write constructors? Yeah. Okay. To put in stuff that you want the computer to do. All right. So more specifically, why would I have a constructor for contacts? Yeah. Yeah. That's right. So what Aaliyah said was we want to be able to put in the first name, the last name, the phone number, and the email. So guys, in general, and this is we've talked about this before here. Okay, in general, the idea behind using a constructor is to give these properties or these variables their values. Okay, so we want to give first name a value, last name a value, etc. All right. So the way we do that is we define parameters inside of here. Okay, parameter variables. So we talked about that way back when. All right. So what we would generally do is something like string the first name. Okay. String the last name. Right. String the phone, string the email. Okay. Let me show you one little thing here, guys, so you don't get confused. if you are in this situation where you have this super long constructor that's not going to fit, like I have right now, it doesn't fit on the screen. If you want, you can actually stack these on top of each other. Okay? So the language doesn't look at any of this white space that I have highlighted. It just thinks, oh, first name is separated from last name and last name is separated from phone. Okay? String, the email. All right? And then inside of here, bless you, inside of here what we want to do is say first name equals the first name. All right. And for now, this is all that we're going to do with this contact class. We're going to have to add some things later, but for right now, we've defined what a contact is and the properties that it has, the 4 things, first name, last name, phone number, and email, right? And we've defined that we can construct a contact, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to build basically the dialogue to look the way it's supposed to look, and then tomorrow what we'll do is we'll build that little list with the contacts on it, and we'll be able to like actually add a contact tomorrow. Okay? Okay, so now what we have is we've defined what a contact object will be made up of. Okay? And what we want to do now is define the contact dialog that will allow us to actually create one of these contacts. All right? So in your GUI project, select your default package, and then go ahead and create another new class. And this one we're going to call contact dialog. Okay? So we're used to defining superclasses. And we say like a superclass was my world, and the other superclass that we used was JFrame. And now we're going to use a new superclass, so we're going to browse and look for JDialog. So I just put in JD here, and right away it brings me to JDialog. If it doesn't do that for you, keep on typing until you get JDialog. Double-click JDialog, and now you should see that it says JDialog in there. Okay? Eventually, JDialog will not have a main method, so we'll get rid of the main method eventually, but for today, we want to add a main method so that we can run this and see that it's doing what we want it to do. Okay? So today we're going to do some stuff to actually just see it, make it look the way it's supposed to look. All right? And then tomorrow we're going to remove some stuff and change some stuff so it does what we want it to actually do from this point forward. Okay? So let's finish that off. And now we have this contact dialog that extends JDialog. All right? So I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. Right here, I'm going to put in new contact dialog. All right. And then I'm just going to flip back over to the picture of what it should look like so we can kind of plan out what we want to create here. Okay, so this is what that contact dialog should look like. What components do we need for this dialog? Yeah. We need some labels. How many labels do we need? 4. What else do we need? What are those called? Text fields. Okay. So we need 4 text fields, and then we need what else? Yeah. How many buttons?
3.
3 buttons. Okay. Looking at this then, do you start to see layouts that you can use? What's one layout that you see that you're going to have to use? Yeah. A border layout or a grid layout, okay? What do you see that might be in a grid? 4 rows. Okay, good. So right here we have a 4x2 grid where my labels and text fields are going to go into. You guys see that? All right. And then these buttons are clearly separate from that, right? So where would you think those buttons are going if you had to give that a location? In the south. Okay, good. So we're going to have some labels and text fields in a grid layout, and those are going to go in probably what? What would you call that? If this is south, then this is the center. Okay, the part that takes up the most space is going to be the center. Okay, and then we're going to have 3 buttons in the south. All right, good. So let's go ahead and create those components that we need. I'm going to flip back to Eclipse here. Okay. So we're going to create components for the dialog. All right, and so you said we need 4 labels. So we're going to go JLabel, and I'm just going to call this first name L. That's a new JLabel. And I want that to say first name with a colon, just like that. Now sometimes I'll put a space here just to kind of space things out a little bit more here. So now here's your big chance to copy and paste. So if you select that, Control C, right? Go to the next line, paste it in, paste it in, paste it in, and change this to last. Right? We want this to say phone. We want this to be my email label. Okay? So last name, phone, and email. Anytime that you get sick of looking at those red lines under the J label, you can always, go ahead and import that. And remember that you can do that via the keyboard using Control, Shift, and O. Bless you.
What do we need for?
We want to label the first name, the last name, the phone number, and the email, so that when someone's looking at this, they know what they're supposed to fill in those text fields. So if you're already caught up to me, then go ahead and start, putting in your text fields, your buttons. All right, now that we have those J labels in there, we're going to create our text fields. So J text field, same idea here. First name TF, that's a new J text field. All right, I'm going to copy and paste. So I got 4 of those. Change that to last name. Change that to phone. Change that to email. And then the only other components that we need are J buttons. So J button, I need a cancel button. Copy and paste, I need a clear button, and I need a submit button. Change this text over here to clear and submit, and then I'm going to go ahead and Control Shift O. On the Mac it's Command Shift O, and then I'll wait for you guys to catch up. Okay, so dialogues are a little bit different from frames, okay? And we kind of talked about that earlier. The purpose of a dialogue is to get something back to the main application. Okay, so when we talked about creating a new class, we want to know what's the name of the class, does it extend something, does it have a main method, there's other things, does it implement an interface? Okay, there's other things that we can do with that new class dialog. For our contact dialog, we want to create a contact. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to declare the object this dialog will create. Okay, or the super nerd fancy way of saying that is instantiate. All right. So, what should a contact dialog create? This is not a trick question. A contact dialog should create a contact. Okay? So the class that we just declared at the beginning of this, called contact, is what we're going to declare right here. So we're going to say we're going to have a contact, and let's just call it the contact. And this is the thing that eventually we will be returning from this dialog. Okay? So that's something new that we haven't done before. Okay? Then we're going to make the constructor. And this should be review, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. All right? And we're going to have to change this tomorrow, but for right now, we just want this thing to look the way it's supposed to look. So we're going to go public contact dialog. Okay. I'm going to add something that you guys are not used to seeing, and let me just kind of describe this for a second. Up here, when we say that contact dialog extends dialog, okay, you've heard me say this word before, but maybe we haven't really talked about it a whole lot. Extends something means it's going to build off of that thing. So when we did my world, we said, okay, we're going to build off of my world, all right? And another way of saying that is that when we said we extend my world, that my world was a super class to whatever class it was that we were talking about, okay? So for example, tic-tac-toe is a subclass of my world, right? And my world is tic-tac-toe's superclass. All right, so that's the way that you can kind of think about that. All right, if you get further into it, you'll learn other vocabulary that goes with that. But one way that I can make sure that this dialog does what it's supposed to do is by putting in here super. Okay. So that super call right there tells the super class, which in this case is JDialog, to perform its constructor. All right? And here's the way I think about this. Somebody who's smarter than me and knows Java programming way better than I do, okay, wrote the class JDialog. And I'm just trying to build off of it. But maybe there's some stuff in that constructor that when we build the JDialog, it should get done. So I use this super call to make sure that that stuff gets done before I start messing with this JDialog. Okay? So let's just try to finish this up real quick. Let's go ahead and we're going to create, we're going to set the layout to a border layout. Okay. And then we're going to create some panels. So we're going to go JPanel. This is going to be the center panel. And if you remember, we said that that's going to be a 4x2 grid layout. All right. So we're going to add all the labels and text fields to that. I'm going to copy and paste this and then change that to last name. This to phone. This to email. And then we're going to take the dialog and add the center panel, which has the labels and the text fields on it, to the center of the dialog. Okay. So that was the 5-minute bell. I'm going to finish this up real quick. Okay. You decide whether you feel like you can follow along with me, or I'll give you time to kind of get caught up to it tomorrow as well. Okay. So we need another panel for the buttons. And since I called this center panel, I'm going to call this south panel. That's going to have a flow layout. And now I'm just going to add the buttons to that panel. So add the cancel button, clear button, and submit button. Take the dialog, which is this, add south panel, to the border layout dot south. Okay. Last two things I'm going to do is this dot pack and then this dot set visible. Now tomorrow this is going to change a little bit. Okay, but we want to see that this thing actually works here. Let me import everything here. So for you guys, Control Shift O. And we got that panel, we got that dialog looking like that. Okay, so we'll get that thing to work tomorrow.